The Cannabis Show is for information only. You should always consult with a qualified and licensed physician or other medical care provider.
Welcome to the Cannabis Show. As you can see, it looks a bit different. Our set was damaged due to a fire, so we will be in a different space for just a little bit. Today we discuss what to expect at your first appointment. We take a closer look at Afriya Champlain and part one of our interview with the Calgary Police Services. Keep watching.
Oh, hey there. Today I'd like to talk to you about innovation in the Canadian cannabis industry in the last couple of months. There's been a bunch of LPs out there that have really kicked it up a notch when it comes to creating new products. For example, MedRelief out of Markham, Ontario has recently introduced a line of strain-specific oils to its patients. If you're having luck with some of their flower strains like Stelio or Luminarium, you may want to give those strain-specific oils a shot. They also offer strain-specific capsules for some of their more popular strains as well. The oils offer all the benefits of the flower strains, they're just more concentrated and are smoke-free. Gatineau, Quebec's own Hydropothecary has also jumped ahead light speed to offer some of the first legal sublingual THC oil spray. A couple of sprays under your tongue and it starts working in as fast as 10 minutes. That's because it can get right into your bloodstream from the mucosa. It doesn't have to travel all the way through your GI system and get processed through your liver. Oh, and I will also mention it has a lovely peppermint flavoring to mask the taste of the cannabis and also potentially add some therapeutic benefits as well. In the same category as smoke-free options, the Hydropothecary also has a line of activated cannabis they call decarb. Simply put, decarb is ground cannabis flower that has been activated or decarboxylated in a scientific oven. You see, in order to get the therapeutic benefits of cannabis, it needs to be activated or heated, and that's why we often vaporize or smoke cannabis. The stuff is activated and it's ready to go. So that means you can put it into capsules yourself or ingest it that way, or you can get creative and add it to things like smoothies or simply just grab a teaspoon and eat it raw. The folks at Tweed Main Street have also recently released a new product and it's called Foria. Foria is a cannabinoid-based sensual enhancement oil that is said to potentially harness the complex powers of cannabis to promote relaxation and increase blood flow, thereby creating a potent therapeutic aphrodisiac. Now, this is a family show, so we won't get into that anymore, but check out the Tweed Main Street website for more information. There's also been some really good innovations in the way plants are grown at some LPs. Green Relief out of Ontario is using aquaponics to grow their lovely ladies. Aquaponics is an innovative and sustainable form of agriculture that combines aquaculture, which is raising fish, and hydroponics, a soilless way of growing plants, into one integrated system. In this balanced ecosystem, microbes convert ammonia from the fish waste or fish poo into nitrates, which provide organic food source for the growing plants. The plants then use those nutrients and act as a natural filter to purify the water that is returned to the fish and gets reused. Keep an eye out for many more innovations coming soon from your LP.
Most of the time on Strain Explorer, we dive into the world of the dry flower that can be vaped or smoked. However, there is also cannabis oil, which is taken orally. Champlain, a sativa oil made by licensed producer Afriya, is a patient pleaser. Known for its pain-killing properties, this oil may also keep you uplifted and focused for much longer. Champlain sativa oil, once administered orally, can take up to 2 hours to take effect. However, it will last up to 8 or 9 hours. We do add caution to taking cannabis oil, as the liver has the potential to make THC up to 10 times stronger. We recommend to start low and go slow and make sure that you do not have any plans of driving or operating heavy machinery over the course of the day while using it. Champlain, like other cannabis oils, can cause some dizziness. Champlain oil is a great way to keep your cannabis use discreet while getting the medicinal benefits you need. In this special interview, Constable Travis Robertson with the Calgary Police Services Alcohol and Drug Recognition Unit sits down with NHS Trevor Howell to discuss cannabis and how to stay on the right side of the law.
Welcome to the Cannabis Show. I'm Trevor Howell with Natural Health Services, and joining us today is Constable Travis Robertson with the Calgary Police Services Drug and Alcohol Recognition Unit, or Alcohol and Drug Recognition Unit. Welcome to the show. I appreciate
Thank you for having me.
you taking time to be with us.
Absolutely.
So we're going to focus largely, because of your role within the Calgary Police Services, on the impacts legalization is going to have on road safety.
Right.
That's been a huge part of the discussion as that July 1st, 2018 deadline approaches. So maybe you could provide us, granted you're not speaking on behalf of all police agencies across the country, but broadly speaking, can you describe some of the concerns police have when it comes to legalization and impaired driving?
So our concern is plain number one, keeping the roads safe. And when anytime we introduce something else into the system, like legalization of cannabis, we have to be very mindful of what are potential risks that are going to happen with it. The last thing we want to see is increase in crashes or fatalities come out of it. So what we're trying to do and try to predict is sort of where we're going to go with the entire trend of the entire country getting legalized. So we need to be mindful of the impact at the same time as preparing not only ourselves, but the public. A lot of it has to do with public awareness for this.
So speaking of public awareness, obviously there's been a lot of messaging around don't drink and drive, but at the same time, there's a lot of, I think there's, it can be fairly said that cannabis acts differently. And I mean, impaired is impaired, but, there does seem to be a difference between how alcohol seems to be fairly consistent in how it affects people, whereas cannabis differs and maybe it may be closer to a pharmaceutical drug and warnings. I mean, does the messaging have to change or be tweaked when it comes to educating the public about cannabis?
I think it kind of does. I think the message has to be tweaked. We've been hitting home with people, don't drink and drive for 40 years beyond that type of idea. Now we're going to have to start that with drugs, and it's not just cannabis in general. It's just every drug. We gotta do it. Cannabis just sort of seems to be the forefront of it. It's sort of taking the brunt of it, but what comes with it is everything else. And I think we have to change the messaging on it. And other agencies are doing pretty good with that. People like Mad Canada and whatnot, they're doing really good with it. But we need to hit that note of drugs as well for the driving. We need to get that message out there, and it's going to take quite a while, and it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve for everybody doing it. So,
right. And does it have to be adjusted? Because there is definitely, I think, there are people who are using it now. I mean, it's been legal medicinally in Canada for over 15 years. To the best of my knowledge, I haven't seen anything that's shown a spike in vehicular collisions since then due to cannabis. I guess you'd call them cannabis-related incidents. So is the messaging and the public service announcement, the education, is that going to be, or should it be more targeted towards people who are going to use recreationally and have little to no experience with cannabis, and to like a younger demographic, 18 to 25-year-old males who I think, typically engage in riskier behavior to begin with?
I think the message really has to have a broad stroke to it. It has to go out to everybody. I don't think we can really just hit just one sort of demographic for it. It has to go to everybody, because when we look at it, part of my job when I'm doing a drug evaluation on someone to determine whether they're impaired, I'm not just looking for your illicit drugs. I'm looking for your prescription drugs as well. And with medicinal marijuana being a prescription drug, I still have to be able to hit on that, and I still have to take that into account. And what we are starting to see is more contacts of people that are driving with medicinal marijuana. We are seeing those contacts increase. We just never really heard about it before because it was sort of on the back burner. Just now, when I talk to members that are on the frontline streets and patrols, we understand that we're seeing that increase of that contact, or it's just more awareness of it, that it is out there, that the medicinal side is out there.
So when you come across, or an officer comes across somebody who is, in a vehicle and may have been using medicinal cannabis or has it in their vehicle, what kind of interaction typically takes place then between the officer and the driver?
Good question. So we don't try to differentiate between a medicinal and illicit at this point, or recreational in the future. We make sure our investigation is one thing all the time, so that it's standardized. So when an officer will contact and they come up to a vehicle and say they smell freshly burnt marijuana or cannabis coming from the vehicle, to them, it's not really going to make much of a difference whether it is medicinal or it's illicit at this point or recreational in the future. Their line has to be the same. They have to go through the same procedures so that everything is standardized and everything is uniform. So that they would come up, they'd make their contact with the person, and hopefully that person indicates that it's medicinal use. What we advocate is whether it's medicinal use or not, don't don't drive while under the influence or after recent consumption of it. Just play it safe that way. Our officers are going to come out. They're going to be trained in standardized field sobriety tests, and they're going to come out. They're going to do their contact, and from there it'll take its course as to whether we do the field sobriety testing on them or not. And just from the interaction and being upfront and forth with the officer is probably the best method of going for it.
Right. So there's obviously a lot of the officers have drug recognition training. It's not system-wide throughout the entire force, though, correct, at this point?
Well, in terms of drug recognition training, there's actually a couple different ways that you can kind of think about that. We have different sort of, as far as an impaired investigation goes, we have different levels. We have standardized field sobriety operators. So these are the operators that are going out there, and if they suspect somebody of being under the influence of drugs and driving, they can perform a standardized field sobriety test. So it's that stuff that you've seen on TV where the guy walks the line.
Touch your nose.
Not touch your nose, not quite, but it's walk
outdated.
the line. That is, but it's in a different set of tests actually.
Okay.
So it's walk the line, one leg stand, follow a pen for standardized field sobriety testing. We need that in order to come from suspicion to probable grounds to arrest for impaired driving. So that's always going to be step one. It is if there's suspicion, you're going to be put through those tests.
Okay. And
if it's medicinal and it's high CBD, low THC, then you shouldn't have much of an issue going through those tests.
I I just want to interrupt here on that. That are officers trained now? Do they have a understanding like the difference between a high THC and a high CBD product, and recognize that? I mean, obviously visually, but if it's contained in the proper labeled container medicinally, there shouldn't be any confusion around that between the patient or driver and the officer?
Right. It's as a service, we have to train members in order to recognize this, in order to recognize that. But again, it's not really going to change our game plan as far as how to deal with the driver in terms of an impaired investigation. We still have to go through it because we do know, and I mean, it comes as a surprise, but people lie to the police. And people lie to the police, and people will take an illegal prescription and maybe put it into the prescription bottle,
right,
or the prescription container, and that's kind of our worry about it, and that's why we have to make it systematic and standardized the entire time. Every time we do the traffic stop and come across that one constant flow and one course of action.
Okay. So is the drug recognition expert then called in after the standard?
Yeah. So what ends up happening? You have your standardized field sobriety operator. They'll conduct their test, and if at the end of that test, the 3 tests, the operator deems that person to be under the influence of a drug, and the person has performed poorly on the test, a drug recognition expert or evaluator will come in, and they will actually do enhanced testing on it. And it takes them through a 12-step process. And that 12-step process will be done back at a police station, out of the field anyway.
Okay. And what rights does a driver have at that point? Like when I've read that once a drug recognition expert has been called, at that point the driver, they have right to seek counsel at that point, correct?
Absolutely. So important to remember that when an officer reads you a standardized field sobriety test demand, so at the road, you're at your car and they read you that demand, there's no right to counsel at that point. Supreme Court of Canada has come out and stated there's no right to counsel. It's you do it or you get charged with refusal. After that point, and you do your testing, and if somebody performs poorly at that, and a drug recognition expert or evaluator is called out, then yeah, the driver or the person in question ends up getting read their charter rights, gets read another demand, and has the opportunity to contact a lawyer. So you'd be given the opportunity to seek legal counsel before performing the evaluation.
Okay, so these tests conducted by officers, they're just part of the overall aspect in terms of determining whether someone's impaired, because they don't exist yet, at least not on the streets that I'm aware of, but there's a lot of hopes that technology will advance so that there will be some kind of roadside test device. Can you speak on what are some of the limitations of that when it comes to testing for cannabis impairment versus alcohol impairment.
Right. So alcohol, I mean, it's easy. We have that instrument for it. We're able to test that way. For drugs, it's a little bit different. Everybody's body reacts a little bit differently. Each drug is differently, and it all depends on the method of ingestion, right? How much you took, and whether the person's going to be tolerant to the drug, and all sorts of stuff. Right now, the only way for us to test in Canada as far as impairment for any drug is by the standardized field sobriety tests and the drug recognition evaluations that we do. That's the only way that we can do it right now. Our hopes is that we do get an instrument that'll come in and aid us, but that's all it's going to be, is just an aid. It's never going to replace the system that we have now. Everything we have now is going to be staying there. The instrument would just be an additional tool that we get to use, whether it be used at the SFST level or in the drug recognition evaluation level. It's just going to aid us. That's all it really is. We're still going to have that face-to-face interaction. We're still going to have those sobriety tests in order to determine if the person's impaired and go from there.
And do you have any sense of whether any device will be in officers' hands by the time legalization occurs next July?
Right now, as of right now, it's really hard to tell when anything will be there. We've had police agencies, you see in the news across Canada, that have been testing these devices out. Whether it's going to come in time for that, it's hard to tell. It would be nice, but ultimately, at the end of the day, it doesn't change the way we go forward right now and the methods that we use right now.
Join us for the second half of our interview with Constable Travis Robertson with the Calgary Police Service's Alcohol and Drug Recognition Unit in the next episode of The Cannabis Show. Hi, I'm Chris, this is Kate and Basil, and welcome to You Can Ask Us Anything, brought to you by Rudy. Get to the root of it at rudy.com. All right, today's question, you ready? All right, it's from Mo. I just booked my first appointment. I'm nervous. What can I expect? Well, apart from the joint rolling, I'm just kidding. Basil?
Well, actually, Mo, what you can expect is you can see a doctor, and it's going to be a real doctor. There's anesthesiologists, there are psychologists, there are family doctors, but it's going to be a real doctor.
Yeah, and one of the parts that we really pride ourselves on here at NHS is the fact that after you see the doctor, you're not just given a piece of paper and saying, okay, go on your way, we'll see you in 3 months. We have a huge education component here. So you'll go downstairs and see Bud Genius. And that Bud Genius will basically walk you through different ingestion types, different strain types, your endocannabinoid system. So any questions that you may have before your appointment, make sure you jot them down. And then we'll let you know the resources that you can go to for further information.
And the Bud Geniuses are very friendly as well.
They're super friendly.
Anything else to add on that, Basil? I guess.
It's not going to hurt.
Yeah, a lot of people say they're afraid or they're nervous or whatever before they come. Bring a friend if you need to, bring a friend with you. But inevitably what we hear back is, wow, that's it?
Yeah,
that's it? Yeah. That's great.
And that friend also books up.
Exactly.
Did I take your line there? Sorry. Yeah, Mo, you're going to be fine though, right? I mean, rest assured, everything's going to be okay. If you have a question for us at The Cannabis Show, you can email it, thecannabisshow@naturalhealthservices.ca.